In this video, I sit down with Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify. Now this week, Spotify announced something big, a major push into video podcasts. It's a brand new era for Spotify, broadening them from just music to podcasts to audiobooks and now to video. During the conversation, we covered a bunch of topics. First, how Joe Rogan influenced Spotify's move into video, and how Daniel thinks about the innovator's dilemma, to stay in just music or keep expanding. We also explored how Daniel hopes creators will think about Spotify in their content mix moving forward. But then we got to the big question. What does Daniel think about the future of AI in music? Where might things go? Where are there opportunities? And how might AI play a role in the future? Lastly, I got to ask Daniel what Spotify has cooking in the lab that has a chance to be the next frame-breaking consumer tech moment in the next 5 to 10 years. And spoiler alert, they've got some pretty interesting things in the hopper. I love this conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Now, without further ado, Daniel Ek.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for allowing me to be here.
Yeah, I'm pumped to get into it. You know, the big thing that you're covering today is this expansion for creators, videos, the huge thing. I like to think about business strategy a lot. And one of the big things is this innovator's dilemma, right? So you guys disrupted music, but then podcasts, audiobooks, and now video.
Right.
And so when you think about it, I'd love for you to just break down strategically, how do you decide when is the time to expand the pie?
Right.
And like why video?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I wish I could tell you that there's some sort of grand unifying theory and sort of we have this master plan of how the universe works. I'm sure there are companies that do that and have that. That's not Spotify though. And so what I would tell you is like many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, when I just basically started dealing with the internet, I heard this sort of quote from this guy who I think created Netscape, Jim Barksdale, and he apparently in a room of like investors was put on a spot of like explaining his business strategy. And he sort of said, look, the business strategy we have is like the only two ways to make money is bundling and unbundling. And it was I think a really profound statement. And I haven't asked him personally, but someone told me that he sort of made it up on the spot. Yeah. And he wasn't entirely sure.
It's a famous framework now, right?
It certainly is. And I think it's sort of like we're clearly on the bundling thing. Now, the question is, why are we on the bundling? And I think it really comes down to what our consumers wants us to do. And so in many cases, the most successful cases with Spotify has really been around when we find our users and creators are already doing something on our platform and we're catering to that and actually sort of super enhancing it. And usually when it hasn't worked for us is usually when we try that sort of top-down strategy where I'm like, oh, we should really do this because that sort of like would be a really cool thing to do. Yeah. Quite often in my case that tends to fail, and what actually works is to bottom up. So video for us was very simple. It actually started with when we did the deal with Rogan, he already had a video podcast. Yeah. And so obviously as he was coming on to Spotify, it was a big thing for him to keep having the video. So we're like, okay, fine, we'll do that. We didn't really think much of people would actually watch because we're like we're gonna be the platform where people listen, but sure, fine, we'll have the video. And obviously what ended up happening was people were really watching and it really sort of grew. And from there on we added canvas videos, which is these sort of small clips on the platform, and we went from having like 1 or 2% of all artists to I think at this point it's like 80 or 90% of all popular releases that now have this sort of canvas thing, and artists love it, and people love it too, and so it was sort of more of a natural evolution. And then as we were thinking about it, and we started seeing the rise of video podcast, which in a broader way than just Rogan, and more people started adding video. And as Gustav shared on stage, we went from like 20% of creators thinking that was a great idea to now 60% of all that stuff is video. So we were caught by surprise, I would say. But what we do and what I love about this company is we lean in, we learn, and we iterate very fast, and we listen. Like the really unique sauce of Spotify is that sort of intermix between the creator and the consumer, and listening and finding the win-win between the two.
And the same like adaptive learning, I've heard you talk about the audiobooks, like the publishers in Germany, like they were trying to find ways to upload, and then let's just build a product to make it easier for everyone.
100%.
Same thing. So how do you think about then a creator, right? All this bundling is happening. Like YouTube is starting to bundle features, Meta, obviously with all the properties, Spotify, there's all these players now. The way I think of it as a creator is like my mix of different content channels. What do you want Spotify to become, or like for creators to think of it as, maybe today with the video rollout the next year, but also 5 years from now? Like what's your thinking there?
Well, first and foremost, we want to be the best partner to creator. Notice that I didn't say the only partner. We actually think creators should be on many different platforms. You should work with all the different platforms. What we're seeing with all of the partners we have is what may resonate really well on one platform may not on another one. And actually, in our case, and a lot of the feedback we're getting is that the things that really work on Spotify tend to uniquely work on Spotify and don't do as well on the other platforms. And so the goal for us then is like, okay, well, how do we become the best partner to a creator? Well, one is obviously listening to them and solving their problems. But one of the other things is, I think what we're seeing right now is the rise of the creative entrepreneur. And I don't believe that these creative entrepreneurs are pigeonholed to one industry or one format. Actually, the whole thing is that you want to do as many different things as possible that you find creative inspiration in doing, while at the same time, knowing what your audience really wants. And, we were just, I was watching sort of in the green room around how Meghan Trainor, for instance, is now talking about sort of music and books and podcast, and she's really in all of these different
verticals.
It's
like multidisciplinary. Everyone's becoming multidisciplinary.
Yeah, and I think that's the truth. I don't know exactly what these creative entrepreneurs want to get into. It's going to be a mix, a little bit of everything, and some are going to want to do more books and maybe more podcasts. Some are going to do music and books and podcast, and who knows. But the amazing thing for us is support them by growing their audience, connect with their audience, and help them monetize, which I think is a very, very unique thing and important thing to do across all of these different formats, because all of them have different revenue models. And I think many of these platforms today, they're literally like, oh, okay, we'll just do ads. Yeah. And in our case, we're clearly doing all of the above. We're doing both ads and subscription and all of these other business models.
Yeah, I think you could tell definitely right away from the presentation, like the focus on monetization and helping creators like really build a business, because that's like priority number one for anyone that wants to be a creator is how do I cover my base costs? That the creatorpreneur, right? We might need a better term, but that's what people are starting to call it. And it makes sense that you want to be everywhere in all these different formats and disciplines and like spread your message as many ways as possible.
Yeah, but also where you're inspired. Like I see so many people who are like, I want to try writing a book, and they go for it and they do that. And that's like the amazing thing. And they have a story to tell. And I think, when I think about the best artists, they're storytellers, right? And so the big thing for us is we're seeing it all across in all verticals. It's the same thing. It's about the story they want to tell, and some mediums and format work better for different types of messages.
So one of the questions that I really wanted to ask you, I'm super excited to get your take on this, is around like the AI stuff. So I make a ton of content around emerging AI, tech AI use cases, trying to help people really navigate where we're at, where we're going, and trying to break it down in simple terms.
Right.
To me, like the biggest question I get from creators, and I used to make music, so I was a musician. From musicians is like,
I didn't know that.
I made rap music, back in the day.
Right.
So
all right.
So but the biggest question I get from like all of my fellow musicians and creators is like, what do the leaders who are in the trenches building these next generation AI experiences, what do they think will happen, is happening, like really helping them understand how to think about it. So just like broadly, what do you think, maybe we'll take music and AI first and then broaden it.
Sure.
What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, obviously there's all the bad stuff that we keep talking about, sort of, what happens to name and likeness, what happens about how these models are trained, etc. But fundamentally, I think the most exciting thing for me is how it lowers the barrier and has the potential to lower the barrier to allow you to be even more creative. So if we put it back like hundreds of years, and take music as an example, and you think about something like, a Mozart, like you had to be a creative genius at that time, because you had to hear the entire symphony orchestra in your head. And you could write down notes for like each instrument that you heard in your head. Maybe you could try it on the piano, but there was no way you'd heard the whole symphony up until like the day before when you started the rehearsal, and then the day after. But you could only then do minor tweaks. So you literally had to be a creative genius in doing that, and the bar was insanely high. Now, fast forward to, the era of DJs, as an example, or many music producers now. I have a lot of friends who are super talented music producers and songwriters, etc., but actually don't know how to play even an instrument, right? But they're amazingly talented. Now, the tool of today is obviously software. Like a lot of the best music producers and songwriters use software, and they spend hours and they know all the plugins and all the tweaks and all the ways to kind of like make it their sound, etc. It's hugely complicated, right? But that's also a huge barrier. And so what I think AI has the potential to do is obviously lowering that even further, so you can expressing your ideas by, for instance, natural language, of just saying, oh, actually, I kind of want to try this thing. You remember on this track, we kind of did this. And then almost having kind of like this partner of yours helping you make that song better. That's what I'm excited about, because fundamentally, I don't know, like, but I think that there's all of these amazingly talented people out there that, for whatever reason, there are all these barriers that they may not be able to express their ideas. And for me, the real power of AI is doing that, just allowing people to be more creative.
I think we're going from a skill-moat to a taste-moat era.
Yeah.
And so skill-moat,
like that.
all of a sudden, like this, you don't really need the skills of which buttons to push, but you do need the taste. Like taste will become that much more important to know what's good and what isn't. I think taste will birth an entirely new crop of like really interesting creatives, where the AI can help you with some of the skill part,
Yeah, but I also think it's like, back to that point, I think, you have to showcase more of your personality then, because, let's take music too. The bar, because of AI, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be able to make music, for instance, sound pretty good, right? And so how do you then go from doing that and then standing out? And then I think you have to truly showcase yourself in a very different way by adding these kind of sort of unique things, what you call taste. And for me, it's just, I don't know, but it's like the best thing I would say is that there's some people that have that sort of God-given talent where they just know what to do. I wish, I had it, but we get to support people instead having it. So we're happy about that.
Yeah. I want to ask you two last questions, just rapid fire style. The first one is on Neko. So I made a video on Neko. I'm obsessed with what you're doing there.
Very cool.
So do you want to just tell people, because I don't know how many people are that really aware that, because it's more Europe based now, but like what's the goal with Neko, and what was the kind of the breakthrough?
Well, the goal of Neko is pretty simple. If you look at the world and you look at which trends are trending in the wrong way, one of the things at the top is healthcare, unfortunately. We're spending more and more money on healthcare as societies, and we're having worse and worse outcomes. And so this is totally unsustainable, and it's becoming a sort of equality factor where it's starting to become a huge difference who has the means to have good healthcare and who hasn't. And so our goal is to think about, how do we fix that problem? And we think the key solution is going from reactive healthcare, i.e. fixing something when something's already broken, to go into proactive healthcare by going basically before something's known, so that we can start predicting, oh, actually, this might cause us a problem later down the road. And by knowing that already, the truth is that the cost of fixing it, but also the suffering included, it's just a much better solution to healthcare. And what's been lacking has been data. And having accurate data. So what we've been building with Neko is just really a new type of experience that allows you to go in and get a better read on your health, and then from there on make more informed decisions about the lifestyle choices you're making, but also real big health indicators that allows you to improve your health span.
I'm probably going to go over to Europe and probably try it out because I think it's really next generation healthcare. All right, the last question is around like frame breaking consumer tech. So I have this idea where, like the first time you tried ChatGPT, the first Facebook friend, for me, when I tried Spotify and played my first song, like it was this really crazy consumer tech moment that broke my frame. And I think what's the coolest part about your job and people like Mark is that you guys really live 5 to 10 years in the future. And there's all these R&D labs and amazing researchers who are coming up with the next generation of things. What would you say Spotify is working on right now that could be maybe a next generation frame breaking moment in the next 5 to 10 years?
Wow, that's a big question. And I'm trying to think about what I can share at this one. But I think, in reality, it's very hard to know even beforehand whether it is frame breaking or not until you put it in the hands of consumers and they get to try it. So like if you'd asked me with Neko, that's really caught wildfire and people are super excited and, people call it sort of a frame-breaking experience for healthcare. Obviously I sort of believe that we were doing something that's amazing, but you don't know that until you put it in the hands of people and you see how people react. And so I think with Spotify, the single most important thing that we can do and we are working on, it shouldn't come as a surprise to people, is how can we fundamentally get AI right? And if we do that, how you interact with Spotify becomes totally different. So just hypothetically imagine this situation. Right now, Spotify is this kind of friend that knows music really well, and it knows you pretty well, but you can still create a better session yourself. But what if you could literally just talk to Spotify and it responds back in real time, and we can kind of have this conversation that you are going now, and you can sort of instantly as it goes just adjust the soundtrack. It's going to be this kind of wild experience that I think will more than anything transform parties.
And like very dynamic.
Yeah, very dynamic. And music is this, this, but it's like is this really powerful thing where it enhances pretty much any moment, right? If you're at a party, if you're having a romantic moment with that special someone, it'll be a lot better with music. And so I think that will be one that I can talk about. We have plenty more things in the lab that's even more wild, but I can't share them yet.
That's awesome. We'll wrap it there. Thank you so much for doing this, and
thank
really
you for
looking
having
forward
me.
to it. We'll get another one sometime soon, but thank you so much.
Thank you.